The Denver Nuggets have been eliminated for a second straight season. While the team is an automatic contender as long as Nikola Jokic is on the court, puzzling or outright bad offseason moves have weakened the on-court production since the 2023 championship team. It's not all lost though. Ownership has made the bold decision to fire Calvin Booth and Michael Malone before the end of the season, adding a bit of variance to the playoffs and giving them a clean slate this offseason. With tradable salaries, several future first-round picks at their disposal, and a perennial MVP candidate locked up for years to come, here's what the Denver Nuggets can do to compete next season. Before looking at upgrades, let's look at what the Denver Nuggets currently have. The Nuggets were 4th in offense this season and 21st in defense according to Cleaning the Glass. Denver led the league in shots taken at the basket at 37.5% and trailed the league in shots taken from three-point range at 32.1%. Now, a lot of that is to do with Jokic and where he operates, but we've seen Denver teams in the past get the volume of threes up. It's worth mentioning that they were 3rd in the league in three-point accuracy despite taking the least amount of threes. So while they're executing well, the low-hanging fruit to stack regular season victories is to increase their three-point volume, but more on that later. Denver won a title with the Jokic-Jamal Murray two-man game at the core of its offense, and while Jamal hasn't delivered a consistent playoff performance like the old playoff Jamal for a few seasons now, I think it's still a solid backbone to build the offense around, especially since David Adelman's going to move from interim to permanent head coach. By all accounts, Adelman's a figurehead coach, spending most of his time orchestrating the defense while Jokic, the world's best offensive player, figures out the rest. Surrounding a Jokic-Murray pick and roll with better shooters and defenders is the front office's most obvious route to another title. Aaron Gordon had an excellent 2025 playoffs before he pulled his hamstring at the end of Game 6 against the OKC Thunder, but moving forwards, a defensive-minded play finisher is exactly the type of player to pair with Jokic in the front court. Also, if Aaron Gordon keeps hitting his threes at a 1,000,000% clip, that'll definitely help his late career production as his athleticism naturally declines. Chris Brown, or Christian Braun, had an amazing season after assuming the starting role in place of KCP, who went to Orlando in free agency. He leads the league in fast break points, a lot of kudos going to Nikola Jokic there, and he hit 40% of his threes while guarding the opposing team's best offensive guard every night. He'll be extension eligible before the start of next season and is making little to nothing this coming season as he finishes off his rookie contract. So right there, that's 4 starters, and I think each of those players deserves their starting spots next season, but for everyone else on the roster, the front office shouldn't hesitate to upgrade at that spot. The 2023 Denver Nuggets surrounded the Jokic-Murray pick and roll with versatile shooters and defenders like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown, with Jeff Green coming off the bench. Their capable depth was awesome, and Michael Porter Jr. was younger, healthier, and actually hitting his shots. While he's never been an incredible defender, one thing he was bringing to the table was rebounding, and in their title run, he was pulling down just over 8 rebounds a night. These playoffs, that number has dipped to 5.7, and it became harder and harder to put out there. MPJ is getting paid roughly $38 and $40 million for the next 2 seasons, and tied with his injury concerns, moving on from him is the best way to upgrade the roster. The only issue is he's quite the negative asset. Who wants to take on 2 more years of MPJ's contract right now? To grease the skids, Denver has 4 future first-round picks at their disposal, as they owe their 27 and 29 picks to the Thunder. Because of the step-in rule, the Nuggets can only trade their first in 26, 28, and 2030 if they're swaps, and the first picks that they can trade outright would be in 2031 and 2032, Jokic's aged 35 and 36 seasons. Not a great idea. However, they just might have to part from these really good picks because their swaps just aren't that juicy. With Nikola Jokic on the roster and Jokic not looking like he'll leave ever, Denver's not going to truly bottom out and have their own firsts be worth anything, so the receiving team of a swap would almost definitely be getting a pick somewhere in the 20s. I started off looking at some of the veteran wings on the market to see who just might be available and in the money of MPJ's range. The best name out there is Paul George, someone who might be available if Daryl Morey and 76ers want to move in a different direction after getting the 3rd pick in the lottery. But there's just no way to make that worth Philly's time, even if they want to pivot and build around a younger core. The last thing you need is Michael Porter Jr. Another name is Andrew Wiggins, but the Miami Heat are better off just holding on to him because at least they know what they're getting. The Memphis Grizzlies always need a wing, but they'll just have to move on from too many core pieces to make it worth their while. The one team I could see talking themselves into Michael Porter Jr. is the Brooklyn Nets. At last year's trade deadline, there were some exploratory trade talks in an MPJ for Cam Johnson and either Dorian Finney-Smith or Bojan Bogdanovic trade. Unfortunately, a straight swap of two players just doesn't simply work, as the CPA stipulates that there'll just be too much money coming back for Brooklyn. But to make it work, the Nets can send some other salaries out in the same move or even before, but then it's a bit like, what are we doing here? That's too much mucking around just to trade Cam Johnson, a good player, for Michael Porter Jr. and probably some bad first-round picks. So sadly, MPJ is probably sticking around in Denver at least one more season. He's just getting paid too much money for it to make any sense. So if an MPJ trade is off the table, what else is out there for the Denver Nuggets front office? With the little draft capital the Nuggets have and their starting five financially set for another season or two, Denver can only hope to improve things around the fringes of the roster and hope that one of their role players can find themselves in the closing lineup. The problem is, if it was so easy to find game-closing role players around the edges, everybody would be doing it. Dario Saric was Denver's great hope last season, and they gave him the taxpayer mid-level exception. He rewarded their trust with 3.5 points a night in 16 games, and as a Warriors fan here, it was clear the year prior that Saric was cooked, but that was Kelvin Booth's sin, and now the next tier GM has to fix it. Another dead salary on the roster is Zeke Nnaji, who's getting paid just over $8 million next season, and then around $7.4 million the following 2 years after it. An insane number for a guy who's just never been a consistent part of, well, I was going to say the rotation, but any rotation. Combining these two salaries, Denver can trade for a player making on or below about $12 million. So that gives them a nice bit of matching salary to pair with some draft assets for a rotation piece. The first name that comes to mind is Josh Green. Green had a down year for the Charlotte Hornets last season, but close games next to Luka Doncic when he was in the Dallas Mavericks. He's a career 38% shooter from deep, a number you would assume that would only go up when playing next to Jokic, and he would be a bit like a poor man's Christian Braun, an undersized wing who's best suited to defending guards but can guard big wings in a pinch. A very tight pinch though, I should mention. He's under contract for this year and the next, and if Denver's going to move on from a valuable future pick or a pick swap, Charlotte might just prefer to keep their assets in one rotation piece. But depending on who they draft in this year's draft, he could be expendable and available. Maybe there's going to be other bidders out there. Also, Green's best defensive position is on guards, and assuming he'll be closing games next to at least two of Brown, Murray and MPJ, at least one of those guys is going to be undersized or straight up bad going against a bigger wing. Another name in this salary range is Goga Bitadze. I mean, back in the day, I was retweeting all of the memes when Denver first paired Jokic with Mason Plumlee and then proceeded to put them on the court at the same time for years. In today's league, double big lineups are actually having some success as teams play a lot more zone and they're a lot happier letting one big hedge on a pick and roll aggressively while the other stays home and protects the rim. Denver would have to kind of grossly overpay here. Orlando are trying to compete right now, and they can't waste two roster spots on Dario Saric and Zeke Nnaji, the exact same problem the Nuggets are facing. While he'd be a nice rotation piece, and I'll definitely be interested in seeing if he could share the court with Jokic, there are just too many questions from Denver's point of view to warrant truly overpaying for the guy here. Keeping on that salary spot, here are some quick-fire names that I found. Aaron Wiggins, OKC already have too many future first-round picks, and Wiggins is a fringe rotation piece while they're trying to contend. Jared Vanderbilt, the Lakers are also trying to contend, and one team can only have so many shaky shooting athletic fours who are strictly not fives or threes. Cough Peyton Watson, cough. Jonas Valanciunas, you don't want to waste your one and only trade bullet on a guy who definitely won't close games because he can't share the court with Jokic. At least Goga can defend at a solid level. So here's the situation. Denver needs another wing, and the good wing options who are all getting paid this little are some of the most valuable contracts in the league. For the wings who are getting paid at MPJ's level, they're still some of the most valuable wings in the league. And trading for a solid backup big is a little bit too risky as well, because in all likelihood, the best big man pairing with Jokic is Aaron Gordon. So you can't trade picks too far in the future just to get a backup big. And I think getting a good backup big for every basketball team would be good. It's especially good for the Nuggets because you can rest Jokic a little bit during the regular season. He has proven to be an Iron Man, but you never want to bet on that. But if trading's off the table, what's out there in free agency? So who fits the bill of a good role player who might be available to Denver at the taxpayer mid-level exception, which is just over $5 million this year? The first name that comes to mind is Jae'Sean Tate. He fell out of Houston's extremely crowded rotation, but can he still play? If he can, he'd be an ideal wing to guard the bigger offensive players. There's Ziaire Williams, who's coming off his rookie deal, and there's no reason why the Brooklyn Nets should bend over backwards to pay him. They're pretty much a blank canvas at the moment. But, if another team comes along knocking like the Denver Nuggets and says we're going to give you the taxpayer mid-level exception, the Brooklyn Nets might just want to keep the asset and just spend the money themselves. Kelly Oubre Jr., he's always had the archetype of a 3-and-D wing, but he's never really put it together, and the last player Denver needs is just another shot creator. Chris Middleton, how much does he have left in the tank? The answer might already be 0, but if you just keep asking the question, maybe you get a different response. Talen Horton-Tucker, if he comes to Denver and learns how to shoot at an elite level, there could be a Jokic bump that needs to be taken seriously. I don't know. Taurean Prince, he's already available for the minimum, and he's hardly jumping off the page here, but he's better than nothing. So I'm sure you're thinking the same thing as me. First of all, that's an extremely grim list of wings in Denver's price range, yes. And then secondly, did I just mention Talen Horton-Tucker and Taurean Prince in an NBA video while expecting you to click on the subscribe button? Sadly, yes. And I'm sure the Nuggets will sign one or more of these free agents, but as of today, it's obvious that none of these wings are game changers. And that leads us to the bigger problem. This time next season, the Nuggets are probably entering free agency with the exact same questions, but just a little bit louder. It's not completely doom and gloom next season as it is this year. Michael Porter Jr.'s contract will be expiring after the following season, and the team will have another first at their disposal to really go shopping in the trade market. But it brings up a question that the Denver Nuggets really need to ask themselves. Are they okay sitting on their hands and possibly wasting another year of Nikola Jokic's prime? If there's a trade out there this offseason to move off MPJ's deal, they should probably take it, regardless of what's coming back. If there's a team who's willing to part with a solid role player and take back your bad money, you should probably take that too, regardless of how expensive it is on the first round picks. They've already fired their coach, so they can't make that move again, and Denver was so close to beating the OKC Thunder in the second round this year. It's clear that the roster just needs a little bit of upgrading. They were so close to getting through, and then who knows, once you're in the conference finals. But it's clear that something needs to be done, and if the front office can't truly upgrade this roster this offseason, they might just be wasting another year of Nikola Jokic's prime. And when he's out there, the team is a walking title contender. And opportunities to play basketball with a guy like that on your team do not come around often, and it would be a massive shame to see them waste this. Thank you for watching this episode of The Film Room. If you've made it this far, thank you very much. If you want to help the channel, like, comment, subscribe. We host heaps of podcasts. You should check them out. We have heaps of other film room videos as we're moving more into this video essay era, so please check them out. There will be a playlist on the screen right now. You can see it more than I can. Thanks for listening to this episode. Make it a great day.